Hey y'all, it's Kelly from Dixie Darlins Tumblers here, and today I'm going to go over a cup that y'all have been asking for a tutorial on. So it's a cup that I've done lots of times before, and I recently redid it and got asked a lot of questions. So I wanted to just kind of walk through the steps of how I create this cup. I take no claim to any technique here. It's a cup that's been done lots of times, and it's basically just a Peekaboo, and I'm going to use blue and green alcohol inks as the base. And then I'm going to lay one of those wonderful outdoor fishing wildlife scenes, and then I'm going to Peekaboo it with wood grain on top of it. So a lot of information here. I'll pack it into a little bit, but if you have any questions, please ask. As always, if anything that I'm not clear about, I will list all the products that I use in the description box below, so make sure you check out those links, as well as I'll include some discount codes for y'all. Please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss my future tutorials, and join my Facebook group, Dixie Darlins Tumblers, and please share your creations. We'd love to see what you come up with. So thank y'all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy it. So today I'm starting out with the True 32 ounce from the Steel Magnolia company. I love this cup. I had not worked with it a lot in the past, but there's so much surface area on the top that I really love using that for this style of cup. This is a great size. So I've sanded the cup with my sanding block with a 60 or 80 grit sanding block. You can pretty much use either one. Usually I pick up a 60, and then I spray painted it with Rustoleum's 2X matte white, and I let that dry for about 30 minutes. And now I'm just applying a thin coat of Counterculture's medium viscosity artist resin. I have started using more of their medium viscosity, especially in a situation like this. I basically just am going to drop some alcohol inks in here, and I don't want this layer to be too thick so it doesn't get lumpy, if that makes sense. Sometimes I've had a tendency, if you mix alcohol inks or even spray paints or anything, and I'm trying to get them to move, it can sometimes get wavy in the epoxy. So I'm just applying a pretty thin coat here. I'm using about 25 milliliters of epoxy here, and I'm going to go ahead and apply that and get it smoothed out. And then I am going to use my torch to pop any bubbles here before I start laying my alcohol inks in. And then after I use the torch and apply heat to it, I do let it sit for a few minutes. I kind of go get my alcohol inks together and then come back, just so there's not a lot of movement in the epoxy once I start applying the alcohol inks. And then after I've done that, I am going to go in and start dropping my alcohol inks. So I'm just going to start out with one of my darker colors, and just randomly, I say random, but I do kind of space them out. I try to space them out pretty evenly, even though I know there's going to be a little bit of movement. So I'm just going to start with that one. All these alcohol inks I'm using today are from Woodies Goodies. I will list all the colors that I use in the description box below. And this one's Tropical Mermaid. I think I use a jellyfish, and then I'm also going to use Midori Sour, a Blue Rum Island, and then Shark Bite. And so I will list all those in the description box below. And then I'm going to add a Piñata white in there. So I'm just going to try to fill in the majority of the area. I don't want a lot of white area on the cup, because I'm going to come in and drop my actual white alcohol ink in that area. So I'm just, kind of starting to fill in areas here. I'm trying to lay them randomly, but they're still pretty evenly spaced with each color. And this is the Midori Sour. This is the greener color that I'm going to add in. And you really can obviously use any colors you want to. I know fishing in the South, kind of what the water looks like, and if I was going to do an ocean scene, I probably would do it obviously more blues and lighter turquoises to have a tropical feel. Here sometimes it's even brown, obviously, in Alabama, but for the fishing scene, in my mind it was kind of the bass fishing, I wanted some blues and some greens. And then I'm just going to take this little dropper here that I use just because I buy my Piñata white in a big bottle. I usually transfer it to this, and I'm just dropping it. I'm dropping it in any area that there's a white space, but then I'm also going to drop it in each color, especially the dark blue. I don't necessarily want to keep that dark blue, so I am going to start dripping it in pretty much into every color that I've placed on the cup. And then there's a lot of ways to move this stuff around, but I personally like to use a straw. So you can definitely use a heat gun. I prefer a straw. I don't know what it is about the look. I've tried both ways. I like how the white tends to blend in with my darker colors when I use a straw to push the alcohol inks through. So you can see I'm just taking the straw, I'm just blowing on it, and I'm going in an upward motion, and then I'll move around the cup, and then from the bottom down I kind of blow it down. I'm probably not as detailed about this one as I would be if I wasn't going to cover it up, but since I'm doing a peekaboo here, and I know the bottom of the cup's not even going to show, but I did go ahead and add alcohol inks here just because I wanted a consistent flow on the cup. But I probably would be a little bit more particular about my the mesh and the blending of the white with the other colors and how I disperse it across the cup if I wasn't going to cover it up. I'd still do it this way. I probably would just go back in and there would be areas that I would kind of move it around a little bit more. There's another cup that I've done where it looks like the fish is coming up out of the water. So there's basically no alcohol inks laid at the top of the cup. They're just on the bottom, so it looks like the fish is coming up out of the water. That one I probably would be just a little bit more particular about how I mesh the colors, but it basically would be the same process. And for me personally, I've learned to always put my dark colors in first and my white on top. It seems that if you have to go back in and add color after you've added your whites, I never get it to look the same after that. It just never gives it the same effect, how the white kind of fans out if I have to go back in and add color on top of it. So I always try to add a little bit, maybe more color than I think I need to start with, because for me personally, I don't like the way that it looks if I have to go back in and add darker colors again. So I just really like the way the white fans out on top of the darker alcohol inks. And then you can kind of see I'm just working my way around the cup. I really don't want the colors blending any more than they are. I really just am trying to get the white to disperse throughout the color. But you can see at the top how there's some areas that are starting to kind of want to run sideways around the cup. That's what I really don't want. I want the movement to be more fanned out. So I'm going to try at this point not to blow too much on colors that are pretty good, but just go back into some of those areas right there where they want to run, and I'll stand over the cup for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, however long, until I feel like it's set pretty good and not going to move, and just go back in and pay attention to those areas. And then I did go in and do another coat. So I let that coat dry for about 4 to 6 hours, and I went in with a second coat of Counterculture's medium viscosity artist resin, and I let that coat dry for about 6 to 8 hours, and now I'm going to apply my vinyl here. And this cup was originally done for someone with this decal, and so they wanted kind of a fisherman outdoor scene. So this is one that I found and just decided I would wrap it around the top of the cup. So I will list the height and width that I do this decal in the description below. And I'm going to wrap it around the majority of the cup. I didn't wrap it all the way around because in the original one I wasn't sure if they were going to want their name, if I wanted to go back and add some details to it. So I did that where you could leave that kind of spot there to add anything that they might want to, that I might want or they might want additionally. Sorry about that. So I'm basically just lining it up with the cup. This cup is about 4.5 inches from where the breaking point is to the top of the cup. So I did this somewhere in the range of like 4.5. I will list the exact the exact dimensions in the description box below for y'all. But I've just applied my transfer tape after I've weeded out all the area around it, and I'm going to apply this to the cup. And this is actually the part that we're going to pull off. So I'm still trying to make sure that it's pretty straight here, and then once I get my transfer tape off, I do go in and I'm going to lightly sand around the top rim here, just with a 120 sanding block, a 120 grit, just kind of a light rim. And then I'm going to take my cup then after I get that light rim sanded around, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to spray paint it with Rustoleum's 2X matte white. So once I've got that spray painted and I've let that dry for about 45 minutes, I'm going to go in with my alcohol ink. And this is just a Holtz Teakwood. This is what I've always used to do my wood grains. And there's a lot of different ways, and I've seen some beautiful wood grain cups out there. On this cup, I prefer to do it pretty basic because you've got other things going on. So I didn't want the wood grain to be so detailed that it distracts from the design of you know, our vinyl that we've laid down and the blues and greens underneath. I wanted that to be more of the focal point than I did the wood grain. So I'm going to make this a pretty basic wood grain cup. So basically you can just watch here, I'm just running the bottle down the cup, and then I take a it's pretty flat and stiff paintbrush here, and I got one here you're going to see me change, because I started with this one and it was kind of fluffy and I just didn't like the way that it was giving you more of a rustic wood grain feel. If then that's what you're going for, it was working perfect, but I didn't like that, so I decided to go back to it's a pretty thin flat paintbrush here that I'm going to use. And so now you can see I've changed my paintbrush. I did not like the way that was. It was just not giving me the smoothness, I guess, that I wanted here, because I wanted this to be a fairly basic wood grain. Like I said, I just didn't want it to distract. So I'm just going to work my way around the cup. I do try to be careful on those areas where I've got my vinyl. I don't want it to run through the vinyl, so I put a little bit less, probably alcohol ink, around where my vinyl decal is, because I don't want it running all over the area underneath the decal. And so you can see I'm just going to work my way around the cup, and I try to lay it off a little bit to the side of where the alcohol ink actually already has been laid, and I continue to brush it up and down so you don't have so much of a defined line. But I found if you lay it right on top or right beside where you've just laid the alcohol ink, you tend to not get as smooth of a, I don't know, it just tends to pull away from the color. So I always try to lay it just a little bit offset of where the previous alcohol ink is, and then I try to wipe this just up and down. You see I'm doing pretty smooth brush strokes here, just so I don't really have that seam there, to where I get a pretty continuous, just smooth look. And then after I've worked my way around the cup, and I'm going to go in and do the bottom, and then I'm going to let that dry. I let it dry for about an hour before I came back and felt like it was really ready for me to start pulling those vinyl decals off. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to very carefully pull off my vinyl here that I've laid on the cup. And then once I get all the vinyl off the cup, I don't seal this. I know a lot of people do. I never have, using this Tim Holtz Teakwood. I've done lots of wood grains and I've never sealed any of them. So I'm not saying right or wrong. I've never had an issue with it lightening up or changing the color of it. So I tend to just go ahead. I will let it sit for about an hour, and then I'll go into my next layer of epoxy. And so then I did go into a layer of epoxy, y'all, and I'm so sorry. I really thought this recorded the first layer after I pulled the vinyl, but for whatever reason, I guess it just didn't. So I apologize. So I did do a 30 milliliter coat of Counterculture's Artist Resin, medium viscosity, and then I did take my 120 sanding block and I just sanded right around the rim. I let that coat dry for about 8 hours. I was just gone for the day, so I let the coat dry for about 8 hours, and then I sanded it, and now I'm going into the final coat, and I'm again using Counterculture's medium viscosity Artist Resin, and I've got about 30 milliliters, and this is going to be my final layer. And then I'm going to use my torch to pop any bubbles, and then I'm going to let that coat dry, and we'll have our final design. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Please, as always, ask any questions on anything I'm not clear about. I know I get asked about these fishing guy cups a lot, so I hope this was helpful for y'all. Please join the Dixie Darlins Tumblers Facebook group and share your creations with me. I love seeing what you guys come up with, or tag me on whatever social media you're on. I love to hear from you guys. I love to see what y'all create. Please go like, share, comment, subscribe, all that fun, crazy stuff. And thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see y'all again soon.